We're going to stay in the U.S. One of the closely watched races in the U.S. election was in the city of Dearborn in the swing state of Michigan. After supporting Joe Biden in 2020, this Arab-majority city helped Donald Trump return to the White House this week. Voters there say that anger over the Biden administration's support of Israel was key to their vote, and anger that President-elect Trump capitalized on.
The city of Dearborn in Michigan and its large share of Arab and Muslim voters has traditionally leaned toward the Democratic Party. In 2020, Joe Biden won 70% of the vote here. But growing anger at his administration over the wars in the Middle East and the tens of thousands of civilian deaths helped Donald Trump claim victory at the ballot box in the crucial battleground state.
As a Palestinian, I could not get myself to bubble in Kamala Harris, who has repeatedly said over the last 7 or 8 months that she believes in Israel's right to defend itself. And at the end of the day, what I think people recognize and people have explicitly said is we understand that Trump could be worse. But the scale of injustice that people have witnessed pales in comparison to anything else.
Zaidan is co-founder of the Uncommitted movement. Started in February, the goal was to pressure the Biden administration to change its stance on Israel and the wars in Gaza and Lebanon ahead of the election. Its leaders called on voters not to endorse Harris, but they also warned against voting for Trump. In the end, they say they're not surprised so many did cast a ballot for the Republican leader.
Donald Trump is playing our communities, is playing American voters, is playing the Arab and Muslim community. And it is failed Democratic leadership that is allowing him to do that.
They say Harris's inability or unwillingness to make a clear break with her administration's political and military support for Israel hurt her chances in Michigan and her bid to be president.
Well, for more, I'm joined now by Yousef, who is a senior fellow at the Arab Center in Washington, D.C. It's good to have you with us. I just want to ask you, are Arab Americans and their anger about the war in Gaza, did it lead in part to Kamala Harris losing the election this week?
Yeah, I thank you for having me on. Look, I think this is a very simplistic narrative that kind of misses a bigger and more important thing going on in this election as it relates to U.S. support for Israel. There were tens of millions of votes cast. Arab Americans, of course, played their part and have an outsized impact in certain places like Dearborn, where there's a higher concentration of Arab Americans. But everything we know from polling suggests that it is far from just Arab Americans or Arab and Muslim Americans who have been outraged over the Biden-Harris administration's support for Israel, despite the ongoing criminality that we have seen its military carry out in Gaza. In fact, earlier this year, a poll found that the majority of Democratic respondents saw what was happening in Gaza as genocide. Again, this is not just Arab and Muslim Americans. Most Americans have been wanting to see an end to arms sales to Israel after all of the horrific things that they've been seeing going on. The Biden-Harris administration's policy, of course, has been to do the opposite. And this has led to disaffection. Yeah.
Let me ask you then, moving forward. So now you have President-elect Donald Trump. He received endorsements from some Muslim leaders in the U.S., which is a stark contrast to the Donald Trump and the Muslim travel ban that we saw 8 years ago. These endorsements, do you think they helped Trump win the election?
I think if you look at actually what happened in Dearborn and the areas where you do have a higher concentration of Arab Americans, and you look at how they voted this year compared to how they voted in 2020, what becomes clear is that Donald Trump didn't so much win in those areas as Kamala Harris lost. Tens of thousands of people who voted for Biden in 2020 simply did not come out to vote for Harris or Trump. And so it was an alienation from both candidates that led to these outcomes. Certainly, you have some people among Arab Americans who supported Donald Trump, as you had people from all different kinds of backgrounds in the United States who supported Donald Trump. But the operative dynamic here was a rejection of the Biden-Harris administration for their support of Israel, and a rejection of Donald Trump at the same time.
Well, you now have Trump, and you now have his promise. He's made a promise to the Arab American community that he will end the war in Gaza. Do you believe him?
You know, I've learned to not believe anything that Donald Trump says. I think we here in the United States have seen Donald Trump make a whole range of statements and promises that are very far from reality and the truth. What I know is Donald Trump is likely to allow Benjamin Netanyahu to be in the driver's seat of policy in the region, which is not very different than what Joe Biden has done. And it is because of those decisions by the Biden-Harris administration that many voters could not bring themselves to supporting the Democratic candidate, and likely cost them the election, and may ultimately cost Americans their democracy, so that a foreign nation can continue perpetrating a genocide thousands of miles away.
Well, if Trump does not keep his word on Gaza, what has been achieved then by not voting for Kamala Harris?
You know, a lot of people vote for all different kinds of reasons. People vote in this country against their immediate interests all the time. And voting is a very complicated act. It's not always a simple, straightforward calculation of what is best in the next 4 years. For a lot of people, it's about principle, it's about dignity. And for people who have been watching children being slaughtered by the weapons that their tax dollars have paid for the past year, the idea of casting a vote in support of an administration who cannot say that that is wrong, was simply unconscionable.
Mr. Munayyer, unfortunately, we're out of time, but we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us on this Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you.